Hi.
Hola a todos. Hola Yvonne. Hi everyone. Welcome. Hey Michael, good to see you. Hola, buenas tardes. Bienvenidos. Muchas gracias por entrar. Thanks everyone for being on. Welcome. We're going to give folks a couple more minutes just to hop on. If you don't mind introducing yourself in the chat, just your name, your pronoun, where you are from the city, and if you're here representing an organization. Gracias a todos por estar. Sí, mientras estamos esperando a todos que están llegando, si por favor se pueden introducir en el chat, si pueden poner su nombre, su pronombre, y luego si están aquí con una organización, pueden ponerlo en el chat y de dónde están en el estado. Bienvenidos. Y también sí vamos a tener interpretación para esta reunión. And we also are going to have interpretation for this meeting simultaneously. Touch base on that a little bit. We'll go step by step over the instructions. But again, meanwhile, just for the folks trickling in, please try to introduce yourself in the chat, your name, your pronoun, if you're here representing an org, and then where you live in the state. I see Erika in the chat, and then I see Michael Banches Canning, Butler, PA, Marcellus Outreach Butler, and Pennsylvania Action on Climate. Perfect. Thanks, Michael. Ya tenemos algunas personas poniendo su nombre en el chat. Ahí está Erika y nuestro compañero Michael Banches Canning, que está representando a dos organizaciones. Entonces, si por favor pueden poner su nombre, su pronombre, y si están aquí con una organización, también tenemos a Jim Sando de Lancaster, que apenas se está reuniendo con nosotros también. Entonces, por favor, pueden poner su nombre en el chat y nosotros también podemos introducir para ustedes, podemos hablar. También tenemos a Eric y a Sara. Mi nombre es Julissa, muchos gustos a todos. Entonces no tengan pena, por favor, introduzcanse. Y ahorita en unos minutos vamos a empezar. And we have a couple of folks trickling in. So just again, please make sure to introduce yourself. We have Sarah on, Eric on. We have a couple more folks introducing themselves. Andrea, Myra, Michael. Thank you everyone for introducing yourself. You're welcome to put any information you'd like for folks to know about you. So basically, the basics are usually just your name, pronoun, any org you're representing, and then where you are in the state. So good to see you with everyone. We are going to have interpretation. So we're going to do a quick mic check from our interpreter just while we're getting started.
Can you hear me?
Great. And then we can test out the Spanish channel before as well. Gracias a todos. Ya tenemos aquí a nuestra interpretadora. Vamos a hacer algunas tests para asegurarnos que todo está bien. Gracias, Yvonne. Gracias, Margaret, por poner su nombre en el chat también. So it's about 7:05, so we'll do a quick test run with our interpreter, and then we'll make sure to get our presentation started. Sarah, do you want to do the step-by-step introduction for interpretation?
Access to that? Is that in the?
Oh, I can do the step-by-step.
Okay, that would be great. If you could do that, and then I'm ready to start interpreting.
Yep, sounds good. So we are going to have our interpreter, Sarah, on for us today. We will have folks speaking in Spanish, so if you are not bilingual, please make sure to choose a language so we can also be listening to our community that is going to join us speaking only Spanish, and Sarah can interpret for us in English. So there is going to be a little, if you are on your computer, there's going to be a globe, or like what looks like a globe on your right hand bottom side. It has a listen in, and there's 3 options: original audio, English, or Spanish. You choose whatever one fits best for you. If you are on your phone, there is, again, also the bottom right, there are 3 little dots, and there is the option that says more, and then interpretation is also an option, and it lists those same options as well, either original audio, English, or Spanish. And also just let us know if you're having any trouble in the chat as well. Eric will be our tech person for the night. So I'm just going to repeat this message in Spanish. Hola a todos, ya vamos a empezar, entonces vamos a asegurarnos que todos tenemos la interpretación. Ya debería estar disponible. Tenemos, si estás en el teléfono, está a la esquina a la derecha, hay 3 puntitos. Si lo pones en los 3 puntitos, dice more o más. En esta más da 3 opciones si quieres escuchar en el audio original, en inglés o en español. Por favor, asegúrense si solo hablan español, escoger el lenguaje español. Si están en su computadora, hay otra vez a la izquierda, a la esquina de la derecha, hay como un puntito que está hasta el final en la esquina derecha. Ahí también lo puedo elegir, perdón, y ahí dice interpretación y está estas mismas 3 opciones, el audio original, inglés o español. Si tienen cualquier problema, por favor, solo déjenos saber también. All right, so Eric, can we activate the interpretation? Just want to make sure Sarah should be assigned as interpreter.
Yo no tengo computadora, es un teléfono. Perdón, no le encuentro cómo se pone.
¿Está en el teléfono?
Sí, es mi celular, no tengo computadora.
Okay. Hay en la esquina derecha, debe de verse como 3 puntitos o donde dice más.
Ahorita. Voy a chequear. Compartir, subtítulo, más.
Ajá.
Ok.
Luego, ahí debería decir interpretación.
Sí.
Ok, perfecto. Y ahí ponga español.
Español, ok.
Ok, perfecto. Y todavía apenas vamos a poner.
Solo los que han elegido español.
Sí, se escucha en español.
Are folks on the English channel hearing Sarah, our interpreter? Okay, perfect. All right, perfect. We're good to go. Perfect, great. Thanks so much, everyone. Welcome for all of those who are trickling in. We'll make sure to be talking slow today. We will have our interpreter, so please be mindful during the presentation and during our discussion. We are going to get started with our presentation. Tammy will be leading us. Before we get started, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. For those who have not, your name, your pronoun, where you are in the state, and if you are here with any organization. Thank you so much, everyone, again for being on. We're going to start first, actually, with our opening lesson from Pastor Kevin Long.
For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. For God did not give us a spirit of docility, but of defiance, resistance, and revolution. Go out into the world and defy the powers, resist the enemy, and join the revolution of love and justice.
Well, thank you, Pastor Long. Great way to ground us today. And then as a grounding as well, we are going to share our Mystica for today. If Eric, you could share your screen, please. And just so everyone knows, this is being recorded as well.
Because we are a new unsettling force in this nation's complacent life. We are here. We are powerful. We are here for liberation because we have nothing to lose but our chains.
We're a new unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new unsettling force, and we're here, a new unsettling force for liberation. We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We're a new unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new unsettling force, and we're here, unsettling force for liberation, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains. And we have nothing to lose.
We are powerful and new.
Have nothing to lose.
We're here, anew, unsettling force for liberation. We have nothing to lose.
When we lift from the bottom, everybody rises. We lift from the bottom, everybody rises. We lift from the bottom, everybody rises. We lift from the bottom, everybody rises.
I'm a preschool teacher, a social worker, an artist, a community organizer, an aunt, a daughter, and a friend. And none of it holds value in this system.
Can't go?
You do. Thank you so much. So it's a great way to ground us for today. So we're going to get started with our presentation for today. And we are going to turn it over to Tammy from Put People First.
Awesome. Thank you. So our tonight's topic for our May monthly educational here with the PA Poor People's Campaign will be about International Workers' Day. Woo! We will share about the founding of International Workers' Day, modern day labor struggles, and our fight for our basic human rights. Next slide, please. The Civil War, the aftermath of the war, and the failure of Reconstruction was an important turning point in the history of American labor and set the stage for organized labor movements. Leading up to the Civil War, most Americans worked on farms. While men and women worked together, they filled different roles. Plantation owners of the South used the forced labor of enslaved African Americans, and by 1860, the slaves labored mostly with cotton, the nation's #1 export. At this time, most workers weren't unionized. However, organized labor movements did have powerful effects on the American economy and politics for both agricultural workers in the South and factory workers in the North. By the 1850s, many of the workers in the factories were men, women, and children of immigrant families from Ireland. Both US-born residents and immigrants from all over the world who came to the US took dangerous jobs for low pay in order to meet their needs for survival the best they could. Social programs didn't exist then as they do today. After the Civil War, the United States entered a new phase of industrialization. Factories had an increased need for raw material to power their growing mechanicalized production lines, which led then to railroad tycoons to merge and expand railroad lines around the country because we privatized them. As industrialization rapidly increased, so did the work of laborers, while profits were concentrated in the hands of a few. Some workers then began to organize for unionization. The workers wanted more safety regulations, better wages, fewer hours, and the freedom of speech and assembly. Most companies strongly opposed workers unionizing because they wanted to maintain their power over workers so they could continue to hoard the wealth for themselves. Factory owners hired guards to keep watch over the workers in an effort to keep them in line, and they refused to employ known unionists. Much like what Amazon does today with the surveillance and demands they make of their workers. Between the time period of 1876 and 1896, multiple violent incidents around labor struggles in the United States history took place. In 1877, railroad workers around the country were striking to protest wage cuts. Over 100 people were killed in clashes between workers, police, and soldiers in Pittsburgh and Reading, Pennsylvania, Chicago, Illinois, and other cities across the country. A few other serious conflicts during this period were at the large factories of the McCormick Harvester Company, Chicago, 1886, Carnegie Steel, Homestead, Pennsylvania, 1892, and the Pullman Company, Chicago, 1894. That's a summary of the struggles of the working class and labor during that time period, leading up to, next slide, please, what is known today as the Haymarket Massacre, which took place May 4th, 1886. Following the mass strike of 300,000 workers on May 1st, workers were shot and killed by police, which led to a call to action for May 4th, 1886. Photos depict, there on the left there, you see a flyer advertising the call to action, and also a photo depicting the Haymarket Massacre. As you see, part of the flyer is written in German. At that time in that area, many factory workers were of German descent. Next slide. And now we're going to watch a video that summarizes the founding of May 1st, International Workers' Day.
For millions of workers around the world, the 1st of May is their day. In the late 19th century, American labor unions were fed up. Fed up with being overworked, in dangerous conditions, and with little pay. So in 1884, the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions met in Chicago and had one major demand: an 8-hour workday. And on May 1st, 1886, over 300,000 American workers went on strike. 3 days later, thousands of strikers met in Haymarket Square, where a riot broke out between cops and workers. A bomb was thrown into the crowd, killing several people. It was called the Haymarket Massacre. And today, May 1st is known as International Workers' Day. While every country's workers have a different history behind May Day, they all commemorate those who have and continue to give their lives for workers' justice.
Okay, so before I hand it over here to Jalissa, I just want to share, that video does sum up everything really well. But May 1st, International Workers' Day, was officially founded in 1889, so a few years after that happened. But it was chosen, May 1st was chosen to commemorate the Haymarket Massacre. And it was founded by multiple organizations across the world. So I just thought that was a beautiful fact to share. And now I will hand it over to Jalissa, who's going to kind of take us into modern day action, strikes, or boycotts.
Great, thank you. And I am going to do this part in Spanish, if that's okay, Sarah. So if we can, for those of you who are not bilingual, please make sure to choose the English channel so we can all understand the next part of the presentation. Again, there should be a little globe on your right-hand side for interpretation on your laptop. If you are on your phone, there is 3 little dots and there should be an option for you to click more. Okay. Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you to everyone. I know that it was a little bit difficult with the video, so we're going to do this part in Spanish. And we'll hear some testimonies as well, and we will be switching the language again. Now we want to begin with some of the actions and protests that have happened more recently. Specifically, what happened in 2006, which was called the Great American Boycott. Or many of us have heard of it called A Day Without Immigrants. This was an international boycott here in the United States, and it was in the 1st of May, 2006. We didn't take kids to school, we didn't buy anything, and we didn't go to work. And this was to demand full rights for immigrants and their families. This was an uprising and a protest that came out of the people. We want to think, what would have happened if this had come from the whole working class, not just the immigrant specifically. So there's some things coming up in the chat. I'm going to pause. If you're hearing in Spanish, you have to make sure that you have selected main audio. If you're hearing for English, just keep it on English. Okay, to continue. This was also a response to try to stop an act that was coming from the Congressman John Sensenbrenner, HR 4437, whose goal was basically to criminalize all of the undocumented population. And our community put a stop to this legislation. We're going to go to the next slide, please. A big part of this boycott was the economic boycott. Our community did not go to work. So these are some examples. The truck drivers who move 70% of the products, they reduced the port traffic in LA and Long Beach by 90%. Because this was a very popular strike for them to participate in. Meat factories like Purdue, Tyson, and Cargill had to close completely their factories, more than 24 factories nationally, with more than 20,000 employees. 9 out of 10 gardeners participated in the strike. The agencies of nannies also reported a big increase in the calls from families who needed help because their nannies didn't come to work because of the boycott. So this is another strategy that we have to have in mind when we're trying to organize.
Next slide, please.
Next slide. Here I have some photos of some of our mass protests, huge protests. This is the May 1st, 2006. There were 1.5 million people protesting and participating. Some of the biggest ones were in big cities like Chicago and LA, and there were more than 500,000 people. There were also a lot of students, high school students. 1 in 4 middle and high school students did not go to class in LA. 72,000 students. Also in small towns, small cities and small towns, students did not go to school, where maybe immigrant communities were not so obvious or out front. I want to show you these images because at this time, in 2006, this was, really just organized by the immigrant communities, but in the future, it shouldn't be like that. If this had 1.5 million people, imagine what we could do with the whole working class. All the people that are on this call, all the sectors that we work in, where we're not just the immigrants who sustain parts of the community, but all of us who are working, not working, or who are paid or not working, if we were all together. So speaking of how powerful our labor is, we're going to hear some testimonies. First, we're going to start with Doneti, who's going to give us a quick testimony for 2 minutes about how he worked through the pandemic and how he still does not have his rights. And then we'll hear other testimonies. So I'm going to pass it for 1 or 2 minutes. Good afternoon. My name is Esvin Maldonado. I live in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Here in our county, we don't have any public transportation service. And during the pandemic, it was really hard to get to work. The people who work in the fields, above all, where we work on the dairy farms, we were working. We were getting up at dawn at 2 or 3 in the morning to go to work. Even when our bosses gave us like a letter that gave us a permission to drive, but the worry that there would be an issue with the police because we had to go, or when they had curfews. And even with all of that, we had to go to work. If the police saw us that we were going at that hour with the curfews, they would always give us a ticket or a fine for not having a driver's license. But even so, those of us who work in dairy farms, we didn't miss even 1 day of work. If somebody got sick, maybe, but we had to keep working during the whole time of the pandemic. I didn't miss even 1 day during that time of the pandemic. I was working, and also my coworkers that work with me through all of that time. But even so, we still can't have a driver's license. They would tell us that we're good workers and that we were sustaining the economy of the state and the country. But under any law, we cannot apply for a work permit or even less residency. That the government should think more of us and help us to be able to have access to residency and with a path to citizenship. We're sustaining this country. We've kept food on the table for American citizens. Thank you. Thank you, Nodesfan. This is exactly what we're going to talk about in our next testimony, about how the government should be working for us, for the working class. And specifically, Milpa's campaign. But here we are, we're going to keep fighting. We know that there are so many people on this call who have fought for years. We've seen their kids grow up, and still we don't have our government recognizing these rights. So we're going to ask Michael from March on Harrisburg, who's going to start his testimony next. So now we're going to switch languages again.
So Michael Pollock from March on Harrisburg is going to be giving the next testimony. Just give a quick couple seconds to be able to switch.
Okay, is everybody good? Switch. So the laws and the policies that shape workers' lives are made in two places, in corporate boardrooms and also in our public halls of power. Our city and county councils, our state legislatures, and our US Congress. And the decisions that are made by public officials are usually just an extension of the decisions that are made in corporate boardrooms. Our political system is subordinate, it's secondary to our corporate ruling class. The vast majority of our politicians don't work for the people. They work for corporate, big money, special interests. Our politicians do not take their primary orders from voters. Their bosses are the bosses, the large corporate special interests that dominate our political system. So on May Day here, let's take a closer look at the work that is done by our politicians. After all, these are the people who decide that the minimum wage should be $7.25 an hour, that some workers are more worthy than other workers, that healthcare is not a human right, and that vacation time is a luxury that we cannot afford. So let's look at the Pennsylvania State Legislature and the work that they do. The Pennsylvania State Legislature is made up of 203 state representatives and 50 state senators. The starting salary is over $100,000 per year, with incredible healthcare benefits for them and their families, an incredibly good pension, a state car, tax-free per diems around $180 per day, and they are only in session in the Capitol about 45 days a year. We have a full-time legislature, and they only work about 15 three-day work weeks every year, about 45 days a year. So what is their actual work? Chasing after bribes. That's what they're doing with their time, chasing after bribes. So here are 4 quick ways that our state legislators chase after bribes. Gifts. In Pennsylvania, anyone can legally gift our state legislators anything. Vacations, concert and sports tickets, endless wining and dining, anything and everything is legal. Millions of dollars a year flow from lobbyists to legislators to build favor between our public officials and the corporate thieves who loot and oppress us. Last year, the Senate president went to the symphony in Austria. The House Majority Leader went to the rodeo in Wyoming. And this year, our governor has already sat courtside at a 76ers game and been given the red carpet treatment at the Super Bowl. Another way that they chase after bribes is campaign contributions. It costs money to run for office. To be a state representative costs tens of thousands to millions of dollars. To be a state senator costs hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. To be governor costs millions to tens of millions of dollars. And to be president of the United States costs billions of dollars. The money that it takes to run for high office comes from people who have a lot of money, rich people. And rich ruling class interests have a common set of goals that politicians have to appeal to in order to get the money they need to run for public office. That common set of goals is not raising the minimum wage or helping workers in any way. It's the opposite. Fundraising is a constant activity in Harrisburg. There are some weeks where state legislators have more fundraisers, campaign fundraisers, than they actually take votes in the legislature. More fundraisers than votes. Our public officials constantly compromise the needs of the public and of workers so they can get the payoff money that they need to get and keep their jobs. Another way that they chase after bribes is called the revolving door. While they say they work for us, our public officials are often working toward their next job. Lobbying firms in Harrisburg are full of former legislators and their staffers. Far too many public officials see public service, working as an elected official, as a stepping stone toward becoming an employee of big money special interests. Our previous governor's health secretary became a lobbyist for UPMC, and his former chief of staff became an Amazon lobbyist. Our former Speaker of the House became a gas lobbyist, and our last Senate president is now setting up his own lobbying firm. The fourth way we'll talk about of how our politicians, our legislators chase after bribes, it's called side jobs. Because public officials who say they work for us, they don't actually have to wait until they leave office to start working for private special interests, because side jobs are legal for our full-time legislators. While they are well-paid and full-time state legislators, they can also legally work for whomever they want. Our last Speaker of the House was also a high-powered corporate attorney while he was Speaker of the House. Our last Senate president was also working as a board member for a bank while he was Senate president. Our current Senate Environmental and Energy Committee Chair, Gene Yaw, is also currently a practicing attorney for gas companies. 2,600 years ago, the prophet Isaiah said, and I quote, "Your rulers are rebels, partners with thieves. They chase after bribes. The widow and the orphan's cause does not come before them." In our own time, our rulers are rebels, partners with thieves. They chase after bribes, and the needs of the poor and the dispossessed are ignored. They glorify their own work of chasing after bribes while making the lives of actual workers miserable. They do not work for us. They are functional employees of large corporate special interests. And none of this changes until we get organized and build the movement we need to win the democracy we deserve.
Great. Perfectly said. Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing. That was very enlightening as well. We are then going to have this next section of our agenda is going to be hearing from two more people. Next, we are going to be having Carolyn Hill with Give Us Back Our Children and Women of Color in the Global Women's Strike, who are demanding to have the child tax credit. And it is up to Michael is saying all of our exact legislative pushes are done. I'll pass it to Carolyn.
Hi everybody. My name is Carolyn Hill. I'm with Give Us Back Our Children and the Women of Color in the Global Women's Strike. I've been taking care of people since I was young. I take care of younger children. I took care of my grandmother, my own children. I took care of my mom when she was sick. Now I'm taking care of 3 of my grandkids who I have custody of. well as my brother who has a disability, and my neighbors, everyone in the neighborhood calls me grandma. As a mother to another mother, we don't get paid like other workers get paid. We don't get breaks like paid workers get. We don't, we get the kids up in the morning. We get them dressed. Sometimes they eat breakfast, sometimes they don't. Then they're off, then they are all off to school. When you think you're getting a break, but you don't, because now you're gathering up their dirty clothes, preparing them to wash them. You're getting yourself together to go to the store, to get food for dinner. When we ready to go to sleep, half the time you're tossing and turning. You're trying to get some sleep. I'm thinking of what I got to do the next day. It would be a blessing. It would be a blessing for us to be paid for this work. It would help everyone. Maybe it will stop some of the doing that they are doing, robbery, stealing, shooting, and kids are selling drugs to bring home. Wait a minute. The kids are selling drugs to help their mom bring money into the house to keep the family together. The moms would have more time to keep their eyes on the kids, better and more money to make sure they get what they need, including being able to afford uniforms for school. The moms could take the kids places and they could go do things together. It would help oh God, Lord Jesus, it would help do things together. It could help in a lot of ways. It would help stop the kids from being so angry. It would mean food, more food, and better food in the house. More outings with the family, more clothes, things we can do now, we do now. Now we're arguing over who gets this and who can get that. If I was getting paid for the work I'm doing, I wouldn't have my nieces taken from me for being poor. And we would finally be recognizing as workers, getting some money we have earned and deserved. I saw how much the child tax credit checks helped my family every month. We was prepared permanent, and we wanted permanent. And now there's a bill in Congress called the Work Relief and Credit Reform Act that we are pushing for, that would recognize caregiving work and pay us for it, and by entitling us to the earned income tax credit. Every mother is a working mother. Okay, and I thank y'all for having me on here.
Great, Lisa. Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Okay.
And our next speaker is actually going to be touching as well a little bit on that, how just because we have some type of employment does not mean that we are suddenly important to the system. As human beings, we have to make sure that our lives are dignified. Debbie, our next speaker from Put People First, is going to share their testimony on what happens when our basic human needs, such as healthcare, are tied into employment and how children are also affected. Healthcare is a human right and it should be guaranteed to all of us.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I will try to speak slowly. My name is Zevi. Oh, I'm from Put People First, and I'm going to talk about the Medicaid cutoffs and how they're impacting my life. Won't get too much into it, but up to, I think, 15 million people across the country might lose their Medicaid this year because of this federal emergency ending. Before, they weren't allowed to get cut off, but now it's starting to happen. So how it affects me personally, I've had Medicaid throughout the pandemic and a little bit before, which meant for the first time in my life, I found a primary care doctor who I trust, who I have a good relationship with. He's competent with trans people, which is important to me and can be hard to find. And we found medications that work for me, so that's all good. I recently got a job that comes with benefits and health insurance. In a way, that's really good too, and I'm lucky, but it means that legally I have to take one of these plans through my job. During the past few years, I could have stayed on Medicaid, but not anymore. And I don't know if my doctor is going to be covered. I can't be sure that my medications are covered. And it's just weird that we're going back to a normal where if you're in a situation like me, you get a new job, your income changes just a tiny bit, everything healthcare related in your life just goes up in smoke. And it doesn't make sense. It's not medically safe. Best case scenario, it's really stressful and inconvenient. Worst case scenario, people die without access to what they need. We know this happens. And I'm one of the people where it's good that I'm losing my Medicaid because I don't need it anymore. I don't deserve it, but I deserve good health care. Even though I got a job, I deserve consistent health care. Every single person deserves that and could have that, except for the system we're living in. And then this job I got is at a nonprofit that provides mental health care for people with autism, mostly children. Almost all of them are on Medicaid. And of course, it's a tragedy when anyone loses health care. But kids really, really don't have a say in what's happening to them like that. And I'm really worried about them. At my job, it's like a years-long wait list to get this kind of mental health service. Because we all know there's not enough mental health services anywhere. And now they finally get treatment. And one day the front desk is going to run their insurance card and it'll be like, sorry, it says this isn't covered anymore. And there's this story people are telling of, oh, it's okay, you can apply for CHIP, we'll figure it out. But these kids should not have to wait for their parents to jump through all these hoops. And for some people, that few weeks or months wait where you're figuring out the paperwork can be really dangerous. I have a good friend, she has 4 kids. They're all on Medicaid. Some of them have pretty serious mental health issues, diagnoses. Some of them have really serious physical health diagnoses. With the mental health, they need to take their medicine to be safe. And if they were off it for a few months, it would be really dangerous for them. And another friend, another one of her kids, I'm scared thinking about the day to come where she takes him to the children's hospital to deal with sickle cell crisis. And they say, sorry, you have to pay for this. And she doesn't have the money. And that's how people are going to find out. It's really scary and it's not right. So that's just what I wanted to share.
Great. Thank you, Zevi. Thank you, everyone, who shared their testimony with us. Because of time, we want to take just 1 or 2 more reflections from anyone in the crowd to be able to share your story as a poor and working class, again, paid or unpaid. And we only have about 5 minutes for reflection. Be sure to optimize this time. No one wants to talk about our failing system? If not, that's okay too. Our group is a little shy. That's okay. We'll move on to next steps. I'll give one more 30-second plan.
I just want to chime in with, before we go on to next steps, maybe it'll hype in next steps, but y'all, we heard some powerful testimonies, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for sharing what you shared. And it's really highlights exactly why we are building this movement, why we are building this movement across Pennsylvania, across this country, why we connect with people internationally, why we have this day, May 1st, International Workers' Day. And there are so many ways to get involved and get into this fight so that we can demand and receive our human rights to live free, to live with dignity, the freedom of migration. The rich can do whatever they want. It's about time we had that sense of freedom. As we shared tonight, history going back hundreds of years, the working class have been in struggle, have been received divide and conquer tactics in our heads, but we have the power if we come together. There are so many moments throughout history and even modern times today that if we come together, that's where our strength comes from. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Tammy. That's certainly what we want to highlight. Imagine again if all of the poor and working class came together to do a protest, to an economic boycott, to civil disobedience. We are very powerful when we organize together. So we want to come and invite you to our working groups, and I'm going to pass it over to Margaret to learn a little bit more about what we could do as next steps of the working group.
Me está cortando mucho la voz.
Margaret, are you good?
I am here.
Do you want me?
Yes, good
you on?
evening. I forgot to unmute myself. I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. And when we talk about next steps, you can go to the PAPPC website calendar to find out what's going on. Can someone put the link in for the Pennsylvania Poor People's Campaign.org? Our next PAPPC statewide call will be Monday, June 5th from 7 to 8. Also, we're calling on people to join our teams. We have outreach, we have media, and we have faith leaders. You can reach Margaret Carew, mcarew54 at gmail.com. I'm the outreach person. And I'm going to tell people just to contact me, and I will find out where you would like to go and if you would like to be on media. That has to do with communications and doing things that help communicate our struggle. And faith leaders, please, if you want to find out what you can do as a faith leader, please also contact me and I will connect you to the right persons. Additionally, March on Harrisburg, Disrupt the Corrupt Tour. On May the 13th, they'll be in Lancaster. May the 17th in Philly. May the 18th in Media. May the 20th in Bethlehem. May 22nd in Pittstown. And go lobby for the gift band, HB484. All the details are online at moh.org. I see somebody's putting that in the chat. Put people first. PA regional health care rights committees across the state are doing people's clinics, door knockings, etc., connecting people about Medicaid cutoffs, throughout the spring and the summer. Sign up on the website and get involved. PutPeopleFirstPA.org or join us on May 6th, virtual monthly education from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And that's on Facebook, and that was entered into the chat. If you have any questions, please contact Margaret Carroll, which is mcarroll54@gmail.com. Can someone put that in the chat so that people know that they can reach out to me, and I'll reach back to you to make sure that you can get connected if you have any other questions. Thank you for being here tonight, and I will pass it back to Jaleesa.
I'm gonna take us away and close us out here, Margaret. And Eric did just add in, I guess, the upcoming activity the Global Women's Strike has. So awesome. I just want to say thank you, everyone who helped out with this call. Margaret for going over the next steps. Jalissa for doing the program. Eric for doing tech. Sarah for jumping in last minute today with interpretation. Carolyn, Michael, Zevi, and Espen, all for giving testimonies. I hope and Pastor Kevin Long, sorry, opening blessing, didn't want to forget that. So thank you all for so many people that took on roles for today to see this educational through. And I just want to end with a chant. Forward together.
Not
one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
All right. Woo! Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.